మేడం స్టార్ట్ చేయండి మేడం.
ఓకే సార్. Good afternoon, dear students. I am Keerthi Rai, JL in Zoology from T.S.R. Sarvail. And here we are to deal with the NEET classes of Zoology subject. Already we have completed the first chapter, that is digestion and absorption. And now let's start the second chapter, that is breathing and exchange of gases. So this chapter is about the breathing and exchange of gases, especially in the human beings. And here we are going to deal about, first in the introduction part, we will discuss about what exactly is breathing, what is exchange of gases, what are the different types of respiration which is seen, and how there was evolution of respiratory organ in different organisms starting from the bacteria onwards. So here, breathing and exchange of gases, let's start the chapter. So first of all, in this chapter, the main thing which we are going to learn is about the respiration. So what exactly respiration is? Let us see the definition of respiration. So what is respiration? It is an involuntary action. Involuntary action means something which is not under our control. Okay, we can't control it. It has to be controlled on its own. So respiration is the involuntary catabolic process. So catabolic process is what? It is something in which there is a breakdown of something and energy is released. Okay, so it is a involuntary catabolic process which involves exchange of environmental oxygen. So environmental oxygen will be present in two forms. If it is in the atmospheric air, it will be in the molecular form, and if it is in the water, it will be in the dissolved oxygen, right? So respiration is the involuntary catabolic process which involves exchange of environmental oxygen and body's carbon dioxide. So whatever carbon dioxide which is produced in the body, inside our body, has to be removed outside. See, here you can see the carbon dioxide which is produced inside the body has to be removed outside and oxygen has to be taken in. So this process of exchange of gases from environment and from within the body, that is taking the oxygen from environment inside and releasing out of carbon dioxide to the outside environment, is known as respiration. Okay, and why we need only oxygen? Actually, if you see the percentage of gases in the atmospheric air, what are the percentage of gases in the atmospheric air? If we see nitrogen, it is 78%. Then oxygen will be 21%. Carbon dioxide will be 0.03%, and rest of the gases will be 1%. So what we can see here, the nitrogen is present in the highest amount. Then why we are saying it is only why we are saying that it is oxygen which is being inhaled? Actually, when we are inhaling, it's not only oxygen, all the gases we are going to inhale, but the one which we are using in the process is the oxygen. That's why we say that it is the inhalation of oxygen. Okay, it's not that other gases are not inhaled along with oxygen. Other gases whichever are there in the environment are also being inhaled, but it is only oxygen which is being utilized for the oxidation of glucose in the mitochondria to produce energy. What is mitochondria? When we were learning about the structure of a cell, we have learned so many cell organelles, right? That is cell membrane. If it is in the animals, it is cell membrane. If it is in the plants, along with cell membrane, a cell wall will also be present. Then there will be a nucleus. Then there will be other cell organelles such as Golgi complex, endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria. If it is a plant, chloroplast, then vacuole. All those things will be present, right? So here The one which we use, the one cell organelle which we use in the process of respiration is nothing but it is the mitochondria, because it is the mitochondria where exactly the oxygen is being utilized. Now you will get a doubt how oxygen is utilized. So this oxygen is utilized for the oxidation of glucose. What is oxidation of glucose? Oxidation of glucose is nothing but breaking the glucose molecule, that is C6H12O6, in the presence of oxygen to give rise to carbon dioxide and water and energy. Okay, and this breakdown of glucose in the presence of oxygen is known as oxidation of glucose, and it takes place not in the lungs, not in anywhere, but it takes place inside the mitochondria, which is a cell organelle, means it is present inside the cell. So now I think you have understood the basic concept of respiration. Once again, let's see the definition of the respiration. It is the it is the involuntary catabolic process which involves exchange of environmental oxygen and body's carbon dioxide. It is a involuntary catabolic process, means which breaks down something and it releases energy. So here energy is being released in the process of respiration. And here we utilize the oxygen to break down the glucose molecule in the mitochondria to produce the energy. Here you can see oxygen is being inhaled, stored in the lungs, and then transported to all the parts. Here also carbon dioxide, which has been transported to the lungs from various parts of the body, is released out through the process of exhalation. These all we are going to learn in the coming slides. The next one is, now this respiration, it takes place in 3 steps. Okay, the process of respiration takes place in 3 steps. We are talking about in human beings. So in human beings, it involves 3 steps. So the first step is pulmonary ventilation. Pulmonary name itself meaning is lungs. So pulmonary ventilation. What is pulmonary ventilation? Ventilation is nothing but breathing or exchange. So the first process, pulmonary ventilation or breathing, is the inspiration or inflow and expiration, that is outflow of air between the atmosphere and lungs. What we have seen in the last slide, that only means in the pulmonary ventilation, what is happening? Oxygen and carbon dioxide is being exchanged. Oxygen is being taken in from the atmospheric air, because in humans it is the lungs, that is pulmonary ventilation. So we take in um, molecular oxygen, okay, and then carbon dioxide is exhaled out, that is inflow of oxygen and outflow of carbon dioxide. Here you can see the mechanism of pulmonary ventilation. Here the air is drawn in through the nose, reaches to the lungs, and it is helped by diaphragm. Okay, the diaphragm will contract, pushing it downwards. So when diaphragm is pushed downwards, then the space, thoracic cavity will increase. Space in the thoracic cavity will increase. And when the space in the thoracic cavity will increase, the lungs will get more place to expand. Okay, so that the pressure in the lungs will decrease and the air can come and it will occupy. That is oxygenated air will come. And here in the exhalation process, the diaphragm relaxes. So when the diaphragm relaxes, it comes back to its normal position, and the thoracic cavity will decrease. The size of the thoracic cavity will decrease, and the size of the lungs will decrease, and pressure in the lungs increases, so it goes out. Okay, so here the lungs are expanding in the inhalation, and in the exhalation process, the lungs are expanding. So this is the pulmonary ventilation process. Okay, the next thing is external or pulmonary respiration. It is the exchange of gases between air spaces of the lungs. In the lungs, there are alveoli. Okay, if you see the structure of a lung, which we will learn in the coming slides, here there will be air spaces. These are known as alveolus. Single one is known as alveolus, and plural is known as alveoli. So there will be exchange of gases in that, in between the air spaces of the lungs, and in the blood pulmonary in the and blood in the pulmonary capillaries. Pulmonary capillaries are nothing but the blood vessels, that is capillaries of the lungs. And the blood will gain the oxygen and carbon dioxide will be lost. So here what is happening, once the oxygen is coming in contact with the, once the oxygen comes inside the lungs, then already in the blood which is flowing, which is there around, which is there in the lungs, is having more amount of carbon dioxide. So that carbon dioxide will be given to the alveolus, and oxygen will be taken back to the blood. So in this way, there is an exchange of gases. The next one is internal respiration. So in the external respiration, just exchange of gases has taken place. But in the internal, here it is only till the lungs level, right? There is an exchange of gases only in the lungs and the blood. But here in the internal or tissue respiration, external is the pulmonary respiration. Pulmonary means at the lungs. Whereas the next part is internal or tissue respiration. So here the exchange of gases will take place between the blood in systemic capillaries. What are the systemic capillaries? Systemic capillaries are nothing but the capillaries which are transporting blood to each and every part of the body, that is to the tissues. So the exchange of gases between the blood in systemic capillaries and tissue cells is known as internal respiration. So we know that from heart there is a pumping of blood, right? And the oxygenated blood from the lungs will come back to the heart, and heart will supply it through the aorta. Heart will supply the blood through the aorta. Now this aorta smaller blood vessels and smaller capillaries, and these capillaries, each capillary will reach to a cell. Okay, each capillaries will reach to each and every cell of the body. So there, or in the tissue level, when there is an exchange of gases, that is because in the tissues what will be present, which gas will be present in more amount, because in the tissues already previous respiration process has been done. So it has utilized the oxygen, and carbon dioxide has been produced by breaking down the glucose. So carbon dioxide amount is there in the tissue, and the coming blood which is coming from the heart, that is the blood from the arteries which is coming to the tissues, they are having more amount of oxygen, because they are bringing the oxygen from the lungs, right? So they are more in oxygen, whereas the tissues, the blood around the tissues, they are or in the tissues there are more amount of carbon dioxide. So if the exchange of gases is taking place in the systemic capillaries and the tissue cells, then it is known as internal or tissue respiration. Clear? So that is the difference between external and internal respiration. In the internal respiration, the blood will lose its oxygen and gains carbon dioxide within the cell. So what is happening here? Once the blood reaches to the tissues, because of the partial changes in the partial pressure of gases, oxygen will go to the tissues and carbon dioxide will come to the blood. So blood will lose oxygen and it will gain the carbon dioxide. So there is a exchange reaction, and the metabolic reactions that consume oxygen and give off carbon dioxide during production of ATP are termed as cellular respiration. So why the cell has to take the oxygen? Because it has to break down, it has to oxidize the glucose molecule. What will happen if glucose molecule is oxidized? It will produce carbon dioxide, it will produce energy in the form of ATP. All right. So here the blood, that is in the internal respiration, the blood loses oxygen and gains carbon dioxide within the cell. Okay. Now this metabolic reaction which consumes oxygen and gives off carbon dioxide during the production of ATP, are termed as cellular respiration. So that is the meaning of external respiration and internal respiration. Okay, so next thing is the respiration is of two types, aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Okay, the respiration is of two types, that is aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Already you must have learned in your earlier classes what is the meaning of aerobic and anaerobic respiration. So what is aerobic respiration? It occurs in the presence of molecular oxygen. So aerobic respiration means it takes place only in the presence of oxygen. If there is no oxygen, then aerobic respiration cannot take place. So the oxygen is completely oxidized. It will do, this oxygen which is taken from the atmosphere. Okay, this atmospheric oxygen will be it will completely oxidize the food to carbon dioxide and water. Okay, and that is the food which we are taking. Already we have seen in the respiration part, the major component of our food is carbohydrates, right? Now carbohydrates, what are the simplest form of carbohydrates? The monosaccharides, right? That is glucose and other forms of and other monosaccharides. Now glucose is the one which we use for the which we use for the energy process, right? So this oxygen will use this oxygen will break down the glucose, that is by oxidizing the glucose, and it will produce carbon dioxide and water. Plus, along with that, it will also produce a large amount of energy. So, the organisms which show aerobic respiration are called aerobes, means they can respire through only aerobic respiration. They cannot respire in the absence of oxygen. So those organisms which will respire only in the presence of oxygen are known as aerobes. And what are the examples? It is found in most of the animals and plants. So most of the animals and plants on earth are aerobes. That is, they will undergo aerobic type of respiration. Here you can see the aerobic respiration. A chemical equation of respiration. So C6H12O6, which is glucose plus 6 molecules of oxygen. So it is oxidizing the glucose molecule to produce the 6 carbon dioxide plus 6 H2O. So water is also being released, which is the byproduct of respiration. And it releases 2830 kilojoules of energy. So each respiration, each process of respiration, that is once the glucose molecule is broken down, it is going to produce the 2830 kilojoules of energy. And along with that, it is producing the carbon dioxide, which is the harmful product to the body, and it should not be stored in more concentration in the body. And the other byproduct is water. So aerobic respiration, again, they are of two types, main types, that is direct and indirect respiration. So what do we mean by this? So aerobic respiration, when it is the direct aerobic respiration, then the in the direct aerobic respiration, the exchange of environmental oxygen with carbon dioxide of the body cells without special respiratory organs and without any aid of blood. So here there is no need of any respiratory organ or no need of any what we call, no need of any respiratory pigment. Okay, just there is exchange of gases. Okay, like for it is found, for example, in the bacteria, protists in the plants, in sponges, coelentrates, all these. If you see, these are the primitive animals and also plants. So here there is no need of well-developed respiratory mechanism, right? In the direct respiration, they don't need any respiratory organelle or respiratory organ or respiratory structure. They don't need blood for the transportation of oxygen or transportation of other that is carbon dioxide. What is happening here? Just there is an exchange of gases from the environment to the body of the organism by the process of diffusion. Example, aerobic bacteria. What do we mean by aerobic bacteria? Aerobic bacteria are the bacteria which will undergo aerobic respiration. There are other bacteria also which can respire even in the absence of oxygen. So they will be known as anaerobic bacteria. Okay. The second thing is protists. What are protists? Protists are nothing but they belong to the phylum Protozoa. Protista is the kingdom. Protozoa is the phylum. That is example is eukaryotic unicellular organisms. What are the examples for eukaryotic unicellular organisms? They are nothing but the protozoans such as amoeba, paramecium, euglena, chlamydomonas, volvox. All those are the examples of protists, right? The next one is plants. In plants also there is no respiratory organ or just the exchange of gases takes place through stomata, right? And then the sponges, even though they are multicellular, their body is not so much complex. Their body is not so much complex that they need any kind of respiratory organ. The same thing is with coelentrates. Coelentrates means the organ like hydra, jellyfish, all those are the organisms which belongs to the phylum Coelenterata, also known as Cnidaria. The next one is flatworms. Flatworms are the ones which belong to the phylum Platyhelminthes, and that is Planaria or Taenia solium or uh, liver fluke. All these are examples for flatworms, that is platyhelminths. The next one is roundworms. Roundworms also they don't have any respiratory organ or any respiratory structure. That is Nematihelminthes, like Ascaris and Wuchereria bancrofti, all those organisms, and Chylostoma, all these are the roundworms. And along with that, there are most of the arthropods. Some of the arthropods, they are having blood as well as they have special respiratory mechanism and special respiratory organ for the process of respiration. But most of the arthropods, that is most of the primitive arthropods, they don't have special or they don't have any modified structure for the process of respiration, and they don't have blood. Okay, but still some of them they have well developed respiratory structure. So that is about the direct respiration. Here, what is the meaning? There is direct exchange of gases between the environment and the organism's body. They don't have any specialized structure like lungs or skin or buccopharynx or gills or tracheae. Like that, they don't have any special type of uh, respiratory organ. Okay, and these are the examples: bacteria, protists, plants, sponges, coelentrates, flatworms, roundworms, and most of the arthropods. Because their body organization is very simple and exchange of gases becomes very easy by the process of diffusion. The next one is indirect respiration. In the indirect respiration, here the exchange of gases will take place through special respiratory organs. Okay, here the exchange of gases will take place through special respiratory organs such as skin and gills, buccopharyngeal cavity, and lungs. These are the respiratory organelles in well developed organism where the body is having complex body organization. Okay, and it needs blood for transporting oxygen and carbon dioxide after the exchange. So here they have a well developed respiratory organ, and also they have blood for the purpose of transporting the oxygen and carbon dioxide once they get exchanged. Why they need blood? Because the complexity, because of the, if you see the coelom, you must have learned in the first year in the structural organization in animal in the coelom chapter, while learning the advantages and disadvantages of the uh, advantages of coelom over pseudocoelom. So all these things we have seen, why all these organs, why circulatory system is well developed in the complex body forms, right? So because it becomes very difficult for the gases to get exchange, okay, because the body form is very much complex, and mesoderm lines the body cavity on both the sides. So there are so many various reasons and complexity of the body organization which helps in development of all these all organelles. So that is about the indirect respiration. Indirect respiration, there is no need of any special structure, whereas in the indirect type of respiration, the exchange of gases takes place through special respiratory organ. It can be skin, it can be gill, it can be buccopharyngeal cavity, or it can be the lungs. And here the oxygen and carbon dioxide is transported through the blood. Next, you can see respiratory organs in different organisms. Okay, here we can see different types of respiration. Cutaneous respiration. So cutaneous means the skin, right? So this cutaneous respiration, it takes place in annelids. Annelids, it is the phylum Annelida, in which what are the organisms which belong to the phylum Annelida? The organisms are Nereis, which we have studied in the first year. The most common examples: Nereis, earthworm, leeches. All these are the examples of annelids. Then, so here in the annelids, the exchange of gases takes place through the skin. Okay, that's why we call it as cutaneous respiration. And in some of the crustaceans, crustaceans belongs to the phylum Arthropoda in the class in the subphylum Mandibulata. Eel, fish, these are the Pisces amphibians. And some of the amphibians, they show different types of respiration. Some they show pulmonary, they show buccopharyngeal, they show cutaneous. Okay, and marine snakes, the snakes which are living in the marine water, they also show cutaneous respiration, and it occurs both in water and in air. So when the organism is present in the water, also it can undergo cutaneous respiration, or when it is present outside the water, that is in the terrestrial environment, also it can undergo cutaneous respiration. The only thing needed is moisture on the surface of the body for the exchange of gases. Okay, clear to you? The next thing is buccopharyngeal respiration. Okay, in the buccopharyngeal respiration, it is found in certain amphibians such as frogs and toads. So buccopharyngeal respiration is seen here. The respiration is taken, respiration takes place through the buccal cavity and pharynx. Okay, and the next one is bronchial respiration. In the bronchial respiration, it is found in many annelids, most crustaceans and mollusks, and some insects larvae. So echinoderms and all the fishes, they show branchial types of respiration, that is respiration through gills. Okay, and the organisms which show branchial respiration, they are found only in the, that is branchial type of respiration will occur only in the water, because in this type of respiration, that is in the branchial type of respiration, the organisms has to take oxygen from the water, that is in the dissolved state. Oxygen should be taken in the dissolved state. The next one is pulmonary respiration. This pulmonary respiration is found in snails, phyla. They both are mollusks, right? So they have they too have some kind of uh, some type of lungs, but they don't have well developed lungs. Okay, and in some amphibians and reptiles, birds and mammals, as they have well developed lungs, they show the pulmonary type of respiration. And in the pulmonary respiration, here the exchange of gases will be atmospheric oxygen and carbon dioxide from the body. They cannot take the dissolved oxygen, so that's why it takes place in the air only. Here in the diagram, you can see different. This is a flatworm. So exchange of gases takes place just through the body surface. And this is the fish where the gills are present. These gills will be helping in the process of respiration. And spiracles are present in the some of the insects. Um, this is the tracheal respiration, which is seen in the some of the insects like cockroach. Okay. The next type of respiration is, so till now what we have seen the aerobic respiration. The other one is anaerobic respiration. This anaerobic respiration occurs in the absence of molecular oxygen. So when there is no molecular oxygen, when oxygen is absent, then what the organism will do? It has to produce energy. It has to undergo the process of respiration. So it will undergo respiration even without presence of the with the presence of oxygen. Fermentation many times. Okay, in this, the food is partially oxidized so that only a part of energy is released. Okay, and some of the energy remains trapped in the intermediate compounds. In the botany, you must have learnt about respiration process. So how the cycles, the glycolysis and Krebs cycles, all those cycles you can, in that cycles you can learn how the oxygen is being, how the carbon dioxide is being broken down to produce all the pyruvic acid, and then OA, all those things are produced, and how finally the energy is produced. And here, the complete breakdown of glucose does not take place in the anaerobic respiration. That's why it releases very less amount of energy. So a anaerobic respiration releases very less amount of energy by oxidizing only a part of the molecule, and the rest of the molecule will be stored, and whenever needed it can be again reutilized. The next one, why, where it is found? It is found in the lower organisms like bacteria and yeast. And it can also be found in the first year. You must have learnt about anaerobes, facultative anaerobes, obligatory anaerobes in the topic biology in human welfare. So examples of some of the worms which can, or which are also, which can also undergo anaerobic respiration is Ascaris, okay, live in, which live in oxygen deficient environment. Now here let's see the difference between the aerobic and anaerobic respiration. So the aerobic respiration takes place in the presence of oxygen. Anaerobic respiration, it takes place in the absence of oxygen. In aerobic respiration, complete oxidation of glucose takes place. In the anaerobic respiration, the glucose molecule is incompletely oxidized. And end products are carbon dioxide and water. In the anaerobic respiration, the end products are either ethyl alcohol or lactic acid and carbon dioxide. In the aerobic respiration, lot of energy is liberated. That is, complete oxidation of the glucose takes place, and because of that, 38 ATP molecules will be released. But here, if you see, in the anaerobic respiration, only 2 ATP molecules are released. that is smaller, that is less when compared to the aerobic respiration. And it occurs in plants and animals, whereas this occurs in anaerobic bacteria. And in human muscle cells also, you must have learned that human muscle cell also involve the anaerobic respiration, where they produces the lactic acid. So there are two types of products which are produced in the anaerobic respiration. One is lactic acid and the other one is ethyl alcohol. So in the human muscle, the lactic acid is produced. Then here you can see the equation, chemical equation of aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Here 686 kilocalories of energy is being used, I mean released. And here the end products are carbon dioxide and water. And in the anaerobic respiration, the end products are ethyl alcohol, carbon dioxide, and 56 kilocalories of energy. So these are the difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. The next thing is for efficient gas exchange, the respiratory membrane through which exchange of gases takes place should have the following qualities. It should be thin, large, and moist, and it should be completely permeable for oxygen and carbon dioxide. It should be thin so that exchange of gases takes place easily, and it should be large. Surface area should be large, should be moist, and then it should have high vascularity. Why it should have high vascularity? Vascularity means rich supply of blood vessels. That is, blood vessels should be more in number in that region, and its surface area should be very large. And the presence of respiratory pigments such as hemoglobin in many animals. In some animals, it is the hemocyanin. Okay, like that, the respiratory pigments are also needed. Okay, and there are myoglobin also, which are the respiratory pigment present in the muscle cells. So these are the efficient gas exchange. These are the qualities for efficient gas exchange. Here let's look at the animals which are in which type of, let's see the animals which shows different types of respiratory organs. So in the earthworms, it is the moist cuticle, and in most aquatic arthropods, that is in the prawn, crustaceans, it is the gills. In the limulus, it is the book lungs. In the scorpion, it is the book. Sorry, in the limulus, it is the book gills. In the scorpion, it is the book lungs. In insects, tracheae. We have learned about all these things in the first year, right? Aquatic mollusks, that is Ctenidia or gills. Terrestrial mollusk, pulmonary sacs, that is lungs-like structure. Sac-like structure will be present. So we call them as pulmonary sacs. And echinoderms, that is dermal branchiae, tube feet, respiratory trees, etc. Hemichordates, gills, fishes, gills, amphibians, larvae, gills, adult frogs, skin, Bucco pharyngeal, and reptiles, birds, and mammals, it is the lungs. So these are the respiratory organelles in different organisms. So with this, we will end today's session, and we will start the process of human respiratory system in tomorrow's class. Okay. Sir, end the class.
Okay, okay, madam. Thank you.